Today we are reacting to your construction questions on Instagram. So I did a Q&A, I answered some of the questions there, and I'm going more in-depth today. Question number 1. Leak issue since open rooftop kami and kisame recommendations for the room below the rooftop. This is a question na I would say like 100 people asked me this. Number 1 suggestion ko, if you're having a problem with your waterproofing, make sure you're using the right type of waterproofing. So, for example, a cementitious type of waterproofing. Yung kadalasan natin nakikita, the most basic type, yung pinipintura, semento yung itsura. Pag nilagay mo yun sa roofing, hindi yun pwedeng exposed to UV rays. That's number 1. Wala siyang mechanical strength. So, if you're walking on it all the time, unti-unti siyang natatanggal and nasisira. And nagpipeel off din siya when it's exposed to the elements. So, what is usually recommended for that is, meron ka niyan, and meron kang tiles above or a topping above. There are also other types of waterproofing such as a PU of waterproofing that is more versatile in a sense. Mas mahal siya. A lot more technicalities, but from what I understand, it's pwede siya sa UV. It's more durable. But again, ask your waterproofing expert. So whenever we do waterproofing jobs, we always talk to the waterproofing expert or the supplier mismo. Is this the right way that we're using your product or not? So at least pag may problema pa yung waterproofing na yun, babalik kami sa kanila and sasabihin namin, ay, bakit hindi ito nag-work? Was it our application or may problema ba sa produkto? But issue talaga palagi yung mga roof decks when it comes to waterproofing. Also recommend na not only are you trusting your waterproofing, you're also making sure na merong ideal slope na hindi nagpapuddle yung mga tubig sa roof deck ninyo. Pag may ponding yan ng konti, not only does it encourage more leakage, but also parang nagiging magnifying glass yun of the rays of the sun. And it destroys the waterproofing even more. Hindi ako waterproofing expert, but that's one way we go about it. And when it comes to underside of the roof deck, just to prevent na may damages in case lang may leaks, I suggest a moisture-resistant board. Merong mga moisture-resistant na gypsum board, merong mga cement board na very moisture-resistant. Dito ginagamit din namin sa roof deck just above our kitchen. And on the instance like Typhoon Odette na may mga konting leaks, hindi talaga siya na-damage, which was very helpful also. Leaks talaga, problema talaga yan. What should the thickness of our walls be? So, not only am I doing a lot of houses, I'm also supplying walls. We call it light panel, and we offer different thickness. So, these different thicknesses are useful across different use cases. So, what do walls need to do in order to perform well? Number 1, they have to protect you from the elements outside, whether it's typhoon, whether it's mga earthquake or strong winds, and it also has to protect you from the heat that's coming from outside. Dito sa Pinas, very, very helpful to have insulated walls. So, important din yun. And not only that, it also should insulate you from the noise outside. A lot of the times here in the Philippines, nakakalimutan natin yung acoustic performance ng isang bahay. And mapapansin lang natin when we're actually living in it. So, walls have to have good sound transmission class ratings. So now that you know these things that you need to consider, you can figure out kung ano yung bagay na wall for your use case. So for example, I want it to be as cool and as energy efficient and as quiet as possible. So in light panel, pwede akong gumamit ng 6-inch and meron kaming 8-inch thick wall din na ginagamit for exterior walls. Sa mga interior walls, we can now go for a 6-inch. If I don't want to hear the room beside me, or if it's a music room and I want to insulate it, kakapalan ko yun. Or I can just use a 4-inch walls, which kadalasan naman will suffice. There's even a 3-inch version that we produce, and this is used for mga back of house or mga condominiums na tinatakpan nila yung mga pipes. It's called a pipe chase. So yun yung ginagamit namin because it doesn't really need any performance aside from just covering things up or separating one room to another. So I think that's a good guide on choosing the right thickness of walls for your home. Si Anjali may question about the insulation factor. Si light panel, meron siyang insulation that's built into the panel itself. Si hollow block, meron konti. The thicker you go, meron din siyang some sort of insulation. Di ba sa Amerika, nilalagyan nila ng foam sa loob. It's called rock wool, sometimes fiberglass, sometimes they spray a foam in between. That's because meron din yun sa code nila that their homes should be at a level of performance when it comes to insulating. Hindi lang yun common practice to regard insulation here in the Philippines, but I think we're getting there. We're slowly learning about these things. And kung napansin nyo sa mga malls, mga SM malls, nilalagyan nila ng mga styro sa labas. They actually stick styro, it's called an EIFS panel, in all their malls. That's to conserve energy. Hindi sila nagtitipid because they use styro. They're actually spending more for the building because it's a wall. Okay, may insulation na sila. But they kind of want more because they're spending a lot on electricity and aircon. So, nilalagyan pa nila ng one more layer of insulation to double that insulation or triple that insulation. So these are very, very effective ways of reducing heat. That's also why, kung napansin nyo, mga big malls, wala silang masyadong windows so that they conserve as much energy as possible. Why is interior design usually an afterthought in house construction? Wow, loaded question. Sa akin talaga, we tend to do it together. I think this is kind of a newer trend because mga bahay natin ngayon is a glass house. I learned this from our architect. Meron silang interior design team din that works with them. They design it together. And I feel like it's a very, very good idea because the architecture and the interior design is now talking to one another in the design phase. And especially in modern, open design, glass type house. It's very, very helpful na cohesive yung buong design with the interiors themselves. So hopefully hindi siya afterthought. Interior design is a very, very important element sa mga very, very high levels of interior design. Sometimes it's even more important because it speaks to the human element. Yung interior designer kasi, in the eyes of a lot of people, is like, oy, pili lang naman ng furniture and then nilalagyan lang ng mga decor. But I like to think of it more than just that. It should be more about the feeling you get when you enter a certain room and in a certain space. If palagi natin pinag-usapan yung feng shui, I like it more na pinag-usapan natin yung vibe and the atmosphere when you enter a house. So not only does architecture dictate that, but also interior design. So if you've ever been to a restaurant na okay lang yung interior, nilalagyan ng mga decoration, you feel okay. But if it's really, really well designed and yung parang cozy talaga yung atmosphere, it helps you want to eat more, it makes the food more delicious, and it speaks to you. Like, ang laki ng difference. So that's the power of interior design. I hope I can say more about interior design, pero I really don't know anything about it. I don't know how they do it, but dapat hindi siya afterthought. Ano ba dapat mauna? Ang engineer, architect, or interior designer? Siyempre, design phase muna. Architect talaga mauna. And then, the architect draws everything. And after the house is like, okay, I like the itsura of my house. Binibigay yan sa engineer to calculate how to make it possible and how to make it as strong as possible so it resists all these earthquakes. So, mauna talaga si architect. Is 3.5 million enough to build a house? Or a typical question dito is magkano ba yung isang bahay? A house is around 20,000 on the lower end and usually up to sometimes even 60,000 on the very, very high end per square meter. So depending on the size of the house that you want, yun yung parang rough na guideline namin na ginagamit when you're building your home para malalaman mo na kung swak ba sa budget mo or hindi. So for this question, 3.5 million, is it enough to build a house? Yes, you can build a house with 3.5 million. It would be a fairly good house, but hindi sobrang high-end yung mga materials na gagamitin, more on paint sa mga walls instead of marble, and yung mga tiles natin, normal quality tiles, hindi yung super Italian 10,000 per square meter tiles, but enough for a good, decent home talaga. I would say like 100 square meter house, give or take a few square meters. Anay problems. Okay, so there were a lot of questions wherein it was about soil poisoning. I did a video about this when it comes to termites in the house. Yes, I agree about soil poisoning. Kailangan sinusoil poison natin For those of you that don't know about it, when you're excavating pa, wala pa yung bahay, the soil itself nilalagyan ng medicine or soil poison para to make sure na walang anay in that area. And then once you build a house, hindi yun yung final step. Merong mga maintenance things if you want to make sure na wala talagang problema yung bahay nyo when it comes to anay. Sa amin, we hired someone that actually does baiting. So baiting is all over the property, nilalagyan nila ng baits for the anay. And then they check it for about once a month kung kumusta. And then fill the bait so that yung mga anay, doon sila pumupunta and doon sila namamatay sa bait itself. So instead of going to the house, they put like a more delicious wood that is actually, I don't know if that has medicine or the type of wood na it's detrimental to the anay, so hindi sila magsaspread. So it's called baiting. So we have that all over the house. It's a black and brown plastic, yun anay bait. There's so much more questions, but comment down below if you want us to do more. I think we've done enough for today, but we can always do a lot more in the future, so make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment on the questions that you want us to answer in the future, and I'll see you later.